Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Marina Amini. I'm the Executive Director for the California Virtual Campus and the Online Network of Educators. I am so excited to welcome you to today's webinar, Humanizing in the AI Era, with Michelle Pacansky-Brock. And of course, many of you already know Michelle, but I want to just give you a quick bio about her and help you to learn more about the great work that she's doing. Her work has helped to enrich online instructors across the world and help them to understand how to craft relationship-rich online learning experiences that support the diverse needs of college students. She has received national awards for her teaching excellence from the Online Learning Consortium and the National Institute for Staff and Organizational Development. And she's the author of Best Practices for Teaching and Emerging Technologies. Recently, she led two large intersegmental grant projects that scaled humanized online teaching across California. And currently, we are very fortunate to have her as a faculty mentor for the CVC at One. Now, before I hand it off to Michelle, just a few quick housekeeping items to keep in mind. We will be giving you links to all of her slides, and there will be also links to this archived recording of the webinar if you want to come back and refer to it. So keep an eye in chat for me to drop that information for you. Also, please, if you need to leave a few minutes early, take our webinar survey that I'll be dropping a link into the chat and let us know how we're doing, what other topics you're interested in, how we can improve your experience. And then my last thing is, if you are looking for a badge, while we do offer badges for completion of our courses, we don't have one for attending this webinar. But when you take your survey, you can actually click a little button on the bottom that sends a copy to yourself, and most colleges will accept that as evidence of you having attended. So keep that in mind. If you have any questions, just let us know. Send us an email at support@cvc.edu. And with that, I am excited and happy to hand it off and welcome Michelle as our host today.
Thank you, Marina. Hello, everyone. I'll take off my glasses to say hello because I know they have a nasty glare. Sorry about that. I'm very happy to be here today, and it warms my heart to see so many names and faces that I know, as well as names and faces that I don't know. So everyone, welcome. Thank you for making the choice to sign up for this session and to attend this session. I know we have lots of options with regards to things to do every day in our schedule, and there's only so much time and there's only so much space. So thank you for making this your choice today, and I'm happy to be here with you. Some of you may be familiar with the concept or the humanized online teaching approach that I'll be framing today, and some of you may not. So one of my intentions is to be very clear about what I mean by that. And I want to also acknowledge that I'm framing this work in a different way. This is kind of a new approach, a new angle for me. And so I'm still trying to figure out how all the pieces fit together. So we just want to kind of start by acknowledging that. And much of the session today is dealing with feelings and emotions. So I want to start with a question and just kind of check in with all of you and ask you to respond to a poll. I'm going to put the link in the chat, or if you are comfortable using a phone, you can scan the QR code on the screen. But if you could click that link that I just put in the chat or scan that QR code, you should be taken to a Mentimeter that will just ask you a simple question. It'll look something like this: how are you feeling about AI? And you can enter 2 different words.
Hey, Michelle. They're saying that I have a message from someone saying that he cannot see you as a speaker. Is anyone else experiencing that issue? I don't think it's my setting. It might be just wanting to pin Michelle personally. Is that right?
I was on a session yesterday and some people were saying they couldn't see the slides.
Hmm.
And
Oh, people are saying they can see you. Okay, then
yeah,
I will reply to that person and try to help them work
well,
that.
the presenter yesterday said that Zoom has introduced some new feature, and it's some view at the top of the screen that you have to toggle. So I'm sorry, I'm not much help with that. That's about all I know.
Oh, I got it. Yes. Okay, there is a view on the top right that I will post in chat now to figure that out.
Okay,
Thank
yeah,
you.
one more thing we get to navigate and manage. Okay, So if you could reply to that poll, and I'll put the link in the chat one more time, just in case anybody just hopped in and you want to be part of it. Now let's go over and take a look at our responses here. So this is a word cloud, so you probably know this, but I'll explain anyway. Word clouds, the more frequently a word appears in the responses, the larger the word. So the most frequently used words are excited, overwhelmed, curious, and cautious, I think. Overwhelmed, excited, and curious, and cautious, and optimistic. So there's a little bit of a change there. Thank you. Thank you for checking in there. I find this really, really fascinating because we live in this culture where we like to just kind of think like things are one way or another way. There's a lot of dichotomies that kind of influence and shape the way we think about the world. And I think that the more we make space for recognizing that that's not the way humans work, that we feel all kinds of emotions at the same time, then it just helps us to kind of normalize our feelings and make space for them and be okay with them. So yeah, I too, I feel I feel like a stoplight with all my lights lit. There's times and things that come up that I'm like, oh, no way. And other times I'm like, this is so exciting and thrilling. And then other times I'm kind of like, kind of the skeptic. And I think that that's a healthy place to be right now. So yeah, and I kind of feel like we're all trying to figure out how to put the pieces together. And some of us have acknowledged that the pieces are in more of a state of disarray than others have. I still talk to folks who say, I know students are using AI in my class and I haven't done anything about it. Right. And then there are others that have actively jumped in and are leading the way and kind of, trying to understand how generative AI works and why generative AI literacy is so vital to the future of the lives of our students and how to integrate it into teaching and learning. So there's a little bit of all of that going on. And today we're going to use that as kind of our first stepping point. And my goals for today are to define what humanizing means in the context of teaching and learning, to share what we've learned from the Humanizing Online STEM grant projects that I've had the privilege to be a part of for the past 5 years. And I know at least one of my team members, Mike Smedshammer, is here on the call. Thank you, Mike, for being here. Examine risks and opportunities of emotional AI, which I haven't heard a lot about. And so maybe it's going to be a new kind of thread in the fabric for you. And begin to reimagine assessments as connection catalysts to support well-being, intrinsic motivation, and AI literacy for faculty as well as students. So that's where we're headed in the next hour. I want to start by this quote by Daniel Goleman. It's from a book from quite some time ago. And I think that one of my intentions in centering this is to really acknowledge that this isn't new information, but it's information that really has to be centered in the teaching and learning work that we do. So I'm going to read this quote. We are designed for sociability, constantly engaged in a neural ballet, a phrase that I love, that connects us brain to brain with those around us. Our reactions to others and theirs to us have a far-reaching biological impact, sending out cascades of hormones that regulate everything from our hearts to our immune systems, making good relationships act like vitamins and bad relationships act like poisons. And I'd like to give that some space to sink in. There's a lot there. But I'd also like to recognize that the word relationships is comprised of interactions. And so I think we could even swap out the word relationships with interactions. And I want us to think about how interactions resonate like vitamins or poisons. And I'm sure we can think about examples from our lives as we reflect on that for a little bit. And the other thing I want to acknowledge here as we're talking about interactions is that, there was a time when we heard the word relationship and interactions and we'd instantly think about two humans, right? And more, we are interacting with machines. And so this creates a pretty fragile situation because our brains and bodies treat isolation as a threat. We are so wired for human connection that when we sense isolation or anything other than inclusion, right? If there's even a question about, like, we're walking into a room we've never walked in before, we're logging into a new online class we've never logged into before, we're posting that first discussion, right, as a student in a discussion forum. That sense of isolation puts our brain into a place of psychological threat. And so it's important for us to be aware of this as educators, as course designers, as teachers, because we need to be intentionally designing our classes, whether they're online or face to face, to ensure that we are intentionally being sure that everybody feels included. So many years ago, I guess it was about 5.5 years ago now, a group of us, including me and Mike Spedshammer, were actually at a DECI conference, and we started talking about this concept of humanizing that had been used in the California community colleges, particularly in coming out of the professional development in of @ONE. And we were talking about humanizing, and it was really getting popular and intriguing a lot of people. And we said, what would happen if we really kind of got serious about this? So our question, as it began to become organized, was what would happen if asynchronous online STEM courses were intentionally designed and taught to send kindness cues of social inclusion and foster belonging for diverse students? And that was the question that we posed. And there was a grant at the time being funded by the California Education Learning Lab. And we joined up forces between Foothill College and Foothill De Anza District and Modesto College and Cal Poly Humboldt, Kim Vincent Layton, our colleague there, as well as Dee Zhu at UC Irvine. And we put together a grant proposal. And it got funded. And so at the center of this was belonging, and belonging is a term that has become, front and center in recent years. And I want to just kind of give it some attention here. Belonging is an outcome of human connection. It's described in the literature as a deep connection with social groups or experiences. And it's widely accepted as a basic human need, and it has been for many decades. From research, we know that college students who experience belonging are more likely to finish a course, are more likely to return the next term, are more likely to graduate and complete their academic goals. And belonging sometimes is understood or correlated with the notion of fitting in, but I see these as two different things. Fitting in is a dignity violation. When a person feels the need to fit in, they're cued to change who they are. Fitting in is stressful, it's toxic, it's hurtful, and it's been shown to trigger the same part of the human brain as physical pain. Belonging, on the other hand, is being accepted for one's true, authentic self. And it's a privilege that many people don't have. And understanding that interplay between identity and belonging is a critical piece of designing and teaching inclusive classes for diverse learners. The world looks very different from the center than it does from the margins. And that's why developing self-awareness of one's positionality is such an important part of diversity, equity, and inclusion work, particularly for a person like me. Person like me with white skin, who speaks English as a first language, who's a cisgender woman, able-bodied, and a US citizen. I have power and privilege that many people don't have. And that was something that I hadn't dug really deep into before starting this equity work. And I want to acknowledge that. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to start this work, this self-work, and continue to do it. This social identity wheel on the screen helps to articulate how our identities intersect with varying levels of power and marginalization. And in the California Community College system, most classes are taught by individuals with dominant identities. And those were the individuals that we were supporting when we entered this Humanizing Online STEM Academy, our project that I'm introducing to you. Okay. And of course, the largely dominant identities of faculty contrast sharply with the identities of the students we serve. And that's important to note. So we received 2 grants over the course of 5 years. Our first grant it gave us the opportunity to develop Humanizing, a model, a research-based instructional model for online teaching. And we designed and piloted a Humanizing Online STEM Academy. We scaled that to 7 California community colleges and CSUs between 2021 and 22, started doing some research and shared the academy and resources with a Creative Commons license. Between 2022 and 2024, we continued the scaling in research, and to date, 330 academy completions across 19 institutions We've had 330 academy completions across 19 institutions, and that includes 15 California community colleges and 4 CSUs. So that's a little bit about the work that we've done, what we've learned from it, which sets the stage for this session today. When we look at the impacts of this humanized online teaching approach, which combines psychologically inclusive course design and what's referred to as warm demander pedagogy, and warm demander pedagogy brings together care and high expectations, which again is one of those dichotomies that we often perceive, particularly as academics, right? You can be kind and caring, or you can be tough and challenging. And warm demander pedagogy stems from research conducted in the 1970s with indigenous students in Alaska. And it finds that those are the characteristics of teachers that students are most successful with. So the impacts of this professional development on faculty were pretty profound. We saw increases in many things, significant increases in perceptions, attitudes, as well as teaching behaviors. We had more faculty after completing the academy recognized the role that emotions and belonging play in STEM success. More faculty were aware of how the instructional environment shapes students' emotions and belonging. So that's accountability for the way one designs and teaches a course. So we're moving away from that, thinking about students as the problem, right? Towards a deficit mindset, more towards an asset-based mindset. And that's really important with equity work as well. We saw an increase in faculty belief that students are capable, which is where we hope all instructors begin a class. And we also saw changes in teaching. Faculty self-reported that they were being more flexible, they were using more audio and video, and we know that the human brain is wired for verbal and nonverbal cues when it's in a place of psychological threat, which is why audio and video is so central to humanizing, and more opportunities for student-to-student interactions. So those are all good things. And we also saw positive impacts on students with the research that we did. We saw high rates of belonging in the classes that were taught by the faculty that completed the academy, and particularly bit higher increases in belonging from the start to the end of the class for students among racially minoritized groups. We also saw a small closing of racial and ethnic equity gaps and increased overall success rates in all course modalities, with significant increases seen among women and Latino students. And that last bullet point, the research was done by Ventura College, one of our partner institutions. And I just want to call that out because it was very exciting to see the impact in face-to-face classes when the academy is designed for online classes. And we all know that good teaching crosses all modalities. So it was really nice to have that. Hi, Bree. Thanks for being here and speaking about the academy. I'm going to share a video now that features some students in classes taught by faculty who completed the academy at Bakersfield College. And I'm just going to let them talk for themselves, and you can kind of listen to the kinds of stories that are surfacing for them, the kinds of experiences that were memorable to them in these classes.
As educators, we know that relationships are the heart of our work. That's why we're teachers. We care about our students and we want them to be successful. The Humanizing Online STEM Academy has had a profound impact on how faculty have been able to support our students. So the Online STEM Academy provided faculty step-by-step directions and inspiration on how they could leverage technologies to create really powerful interactions with their students.
As a result of me taking the academy, I would say one big change I see is an increase in communication with my students. So if something sort of goes wrong with them taking the class, and sometimes they might just silently unenroll and disappear, now they reach out to me, and I've seen a major increase in retention due to that increase in communication.
There was a video in the liquid syllabus that, Professor Choate took the time to sort of introduce herself, give us a breakdown of like how the class was going to work, what to expect. Seeing Professor Choate in that video just helps me feel less anxious.
It matters that an instructor cares, because my first year here, I was super overwhelmed. I didn't know how to communicate. I thought I was organized already, but I had no idea. If you don't have a support system, you feel like you want to give up. There are students that were in my classroom that would want to ask, but they just didn't.
Professor Cho actually has one of the nicest layout and canvas that I've ever seen. It was really organized. She provided additional lectures that we could watch videos on and sort of just dive a little deeper into the topics to understand. The class was by far one of the most challenging classes I've taken so far. So having the opportunity to go back and listen to her lectures once more made it that much easier to overcome some of the challenges.
So it was nearing the beginning of the semester, pretty much just Professor Ayuk and I in the lab, and he then wanted to ask me what my major was, and was probably interested to see that I was not an engineering major or a physics major or anything related to that. Fast forward 5 quizzes into the semester, I received a quiz back. Instead of commentary on how I could improve or something with an exclamation point at the end, consider majoring in 3 different engineering majors or physics, all caps. A few weeks following that, he then proceeded to ask, so did you consider changing your major? And so I thought that was very encouraging and very motivating. Now, no, I didn't change my major, but just knowing that my efforts were paying off in this course that was difficult for me was definitely very rewarding.
One time, I got a lower score on my second exam than my first exam, so she reached out to me and asked me if everything was good. As a student, we have a lot of things going on in our life. It showed that she doesn't only care about my learning, but me as a human being. And because of that one little thing that she reached out to me, that made me do even better on my third exam.
It's normal not to understand things the first time around, and being able to establish a good relationship with your professor where you can say, hey, can I talk to you like on a separate note, and can we discuss this a little further?
One of the really powerful things about the Academy is that faculty have been able to take what they've learned and apply it to their face-to-face teaching.
And we have research from our project that shows that students in online classes that are taught by faculty who complete the academy experience high rates of belonging. As you were listening to those experiences of students in humanized classes, you probably noticed that they were talking about little things that sometimes we think don't make a big difference, but they do. And so as we move forward with closing equity gaps, we need to be sure that we keep instructor to student relationships at the center of our work, whether or not learning happens face-to-face or online. Any comments or questions? I'm keeping my eyes on chat. I welcome you to share in chat if you have anything you'd like to say, or if there's any comments, we can take one right now. Thank you for the reactions. Yeah.
I was going to say, I'm sorry. that I really appreciate that video because I'm actually new as an instructor, especially to online instructions. And I did have great training through my college at the very beginning to get certified, but this really reinforces that there are little simple things that you can do to really bring um, humanity to online instruction. And I feel like that needs to be reinforced more often because I definitely want to become a better online instructor because I recognize that's the most popular modality at this point in time. And I really just want to be able to still connect with my students. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much, Brooke, for sharing your experiences, and welcome to the online teaching community. You've got a lot of amazing online teachers in the state of California who are in this with you. And so that's great. And just knowing that you do want to improve is the most important thing. So there's lots of practices, there's lots of things that you can do. And I think that one of the things I want to center just a little bit and untangle right now is this notion of I'm using the word relationships a lot, and it's a particular type of relationship that is centered with humanized online teaching. It's more grounded in relational authority uh, than positional relationship, and than a positional relationship. I'm sorry, positional authority. And I'm gonna dig into that a little bit later in the presentation, but I just want to kind of tag that right now because it's the type of relationship is really important. And we find that faculty who went through the academy, we repeatedly heard over and over in the feedback that they felt like they were finally getting permission to be the kind of teacher that they always wanted to be, which I think is honestly very alarming. I'm just going to say, I find that when there are individuals who want to do the right thing in their teaching, and these mental models and these cultural constructions of the way things are done deeply influence an individual to do things otherwise, that can be problematic for students, particularly students from minoritized groups, then that's something that we really have to be sure that does not happen anymore. Yeah, so let's keep going here. So humanizing is, if I had to kind of define it, humanizing is leveraging human connection to foster a caring and a challenging learning environment in all modalities. And yes, it can be done online. Yes, online classes can increase isolation for some people. Absolutely. And that's why we need to be more intentional about doing this in online classes. And it takes a certain degree of digital fluency to understand how to foster relationships through technology. Two transformative takeaways is that care and challenge can and should coexist. And this was something that we heard over and over from faculty. And that human connection is fuel for equitable learning. The way a person feels is part of their motivation. It either activates motivation or it turns an individual away. And we can apply that to any experience that we've had in life. These are 3 books that I just wanted to acknowledge that in different ways delve into similar topics. I'm reading the Sarah Rose Kavanaugh book right now. It's a really, really good book. Mind Over Monsters, supporting the youth mental health with compassionate challenge. And then Zaretta Hammond's Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain, which has been very popular in recent years, and Relationship Rich Education by Peter Felton and Leo Lambert. Now, the backdrop to our teaching, there's a lot going on in the backdrop. I'm going to just acknowledge that I'm just going to pick one thing that is difficult. And we have a loneliness epidemic in the US. It's not just in the US, but it is in the US. And it's so significant that in 2023, the US Surgeon General put out a report about this epidemic. And in this report, it identified that 1 in 2 US adults are lonely. And if you are interested in understanding how lonely is measured, there's a link here that will take you out to this UCLA loneliness scale, and you can scroll down to the second page and read some of those measures, okay? So 1 in 2 US adults are lonely, and we see disproportionately impacted groups, which unfortunately are the same disproportionately impacted groups that we see repeated across many different data points. Except for young adults. Young adults is actually a new group that has been that loneliness has increased in recent years. 79% of 18 to 24-year-olds compared to 41% of those 66 and older self-report as lonely on the from taking the loneliness measure. And that's something that has changed. The other thing that has changed is that the type of loneliness that is being reported today is different than in recent years. Loneliness used to be an experience that was correlated with being alone. And now it's correlated with being with other people. There's more people today who say, for example, don't feel connected to the people I'm around. And that's where we see the biggest increase amongst young people. We also know that loneliness increases job dissatisfaction, our productivity at work. It increases the odds of dying early by 45%, which is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Our mental health is serious business. It affects our physical health. And social media is a big part of this correlation with young people. A lot of times people point to COVID as like the reason for the loneliness epidemic, but it's actually been increasing for decades in the United States. But we do see the sharpest increase since social media became mainstreamed. So that constant comparison, looking at the quote unquote perfect lives of others and comparing ourselves to them. So what is the antidote to this? Well, the US Surgeon General clearly points out that we need to connect with people more. And I love this quote. I find it very empowering. Each of us can start now in our own lives by strengthening our connections and relationships. Our individual relationships are an untapped resource, a source of healing, hiding in plain sight. They can help us live healthier, more productive, and more fulfilled lives. Answer that phone call from a friend, make time to share a meal, listen without the distraction of your phone, perform an act of service, express yourself authentically. The keys to human connection are simple, but extraordinarily powerful, sorry, extraordinarily powerful. And that's something I want us to carry into the way we are thinking about responding to AI right now, the way we are thinking about, if we're beginning to ponder redesigning our assessments, how can we bring that in even more so into the teaching and learning environment? Another thing happening in the backdrop, we know about generative AI. Emotional AI is being used more and more.
As educators, we know that
Whoops.
relationships.
I think we got a hot mic there. Let me just take care of that. Okay. So what is emotional AI? It's an emerging field, and let's break it down a little bit. Emotional AI uses large data sets to create algorithms that attempt to decode the feelings behind words, a voice, or a facial expression. The data comes from decades of research about what different facial expressions and vocal intonations mean. This research has been happening since way back to I love to say this, way back to the 1900s. In short, emotional AI uses machines to guess what humans are feeling based on verbal or nonverbal cues. And then the AI then adapts to that data input. So for example, a bot on a phone may, change script if it interprets you as being upset. You may see mental health resources appear if you look distressed. Learning materials could also adapt in response to a person's emotions, right? That's part of where we're headed as well. Emotional AI is being used even in some workplaces to inform managers about the emotional state of employees. So in a kind of a concise way, it's applied to different contexts to create what is phrased as more personalized experiences. Oops, sorry, folks. So the risks of emotional AI, of course, there are several. Facial recognition software is biased. It's shown to be more likely to exclude individuals with Black and brown skin. Prediction of feelings based on external expression results in emotional stereotypes and algorithmic bias. So we leave out the differences, right? We kind of just focus on what the way it works for most people. So cultural differences get left out, right? Facial expressions, a lot of this is deeply informed by culture. Neurodivergence gets left out. And the third one that I'm going to dig more deeply into is that machines start to replace human interactions. I'm going to show a video now of a product that is now available for pre-order, okay? This is a real product.
Gosh, I'm out of breath.
We made it.
I don't know how to woo very good. That's fair. All right, let's go.
Let me show you how to game, bro, okay? Oh, come on, come on. Oh, let's go!
Are you serious? Come on, man. I hate this game.
Take notes, baby.
Oh, man, you guys suck.
Bro, you look like the back
Let's
of the
go. Let's go.
Dude, what? How did you do that?
I know the effects are crazy. It's dank. I could eat one of these every day. Oh, sorry, I got you messy.
It's really nice up here. How'd you find this place?
I don't know. I just kind of like to come up here to be by myself. I've never brought anybody else. I mean, besides her.
She goes everywhere with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Guess I must be doing something right, though.
I guess so. We'll see.
So what do you think about that? Any responses? Only $99 for a friend.
Was that literally a little brooch that people wore that was like listening to their outward conversations and then sending them text messages on their phones in response?
Yes, and I would say it's doing more than that. It's probably integrated in some way with the health app and probably can like read other things happening in their body, like their heart rate and those sorts of things. Yes.
That's
Yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah. Kind of seems like a Black Mirror episode, doesn't it? So what's starting to happen is that capitalism it turns fears and vulnerabilities into opportunities for new markets. And so we have to think about this widespread loneliness epidemic and this explosion of emotional AI right now. And it really is an explosion. And there's not just one tool, there's lots of tools. And there's some really terrible stories that I'm not going to get into that are associated with a lot of these tools already. And I want you to know this because it's up to us as humans to have guardrails right now for this stuff and to think about how we're going to navigate this. And again, I want to also think about that stoplight because I'm sure there are some instances where tools like this could be helpful for certain instances for certain individuals, but we know about products, the more people buy products to fill a void, the more products they buy. And so if we start to think about the future and having more and more emotional AI tools taking the place of human to human interaction, you can see the direction that we're headed in. Okay, so this stuff concerns me a lot. I'm going to be very clear about the way I feel about it. And it also concerns me that, you know, a lot of young people are most likely to be targeted and to use them. So emotions are really at risk of becoming a commodity right now. And what I want to empower all of you with is to know that emotions are your superpowers more than ever. Emotions are not something that AI is good at. Okay? So how we frame AI in everything about it, and how we move forward with it in this era is really going to be central to this notion of emotions as your superpowers and whether or not that gets stripped away from us or not. So the research, going back to the research that we did about STEM, one of the things that we did was we had faculty create something called a liquid syllabus. And it's a resource that was intended to be sent out to students the week before classes start. And at the top of the liquid syllabus, also, some people call it a welcome package. Some people don't like the name liquid syllabus, which is fine. But we want the instructor's warm, welcoming presence to be at the top in the form of a video. So faculty take that however they feel comfortable. You know, some faculty give a tour of their backyard. Some faculty, you know, just give a welcoming message. Other faculty show themselves paddleboarding or out at the beach. This is a message from a student that was sent to a faculty member after seeing a liquid syllabus. I just had to reach out and tell you that reading through your syllabus and watching your welcome video literally brought tears to my eyes. I cannot tell you how many times I've attempted to take this English course and not complete because I have been too overwhelmed. I am a mom to 2 young children, and between raising them, working full-time, trying to balance my marriage, and chase after my longtime dream of becoming a nurse, college has not been an easy journey for me. I've been dreading this semester because I have several rigorous courses and chose your course this semester purely based off zero-cost material. Good to know. You normalize not having a perfectly straight path. You've given me so much hope for this course and others I'm taking, and it's been a wonderful reminder to keep my goals and dreams in sight and keep pushing through when you just don't think you can do anymore. Thank you. I really look forward to learning from you this semester. Exclamation point. This is the kind of data that's really hard to get, and this did not come out through our research. This came out from a faculty member intentionally elevating this and sharing it with us. It's really hard to do research when your intervention involves something before the course. But that was about that video. That was about this brief instructor video. Okay. Now, brief videos at the start of a course are so impactful. Today we have video bots, and folks, they have landed. They have landed. And I want to just say that video bots cannot replace you if the intent of your video is to build human connection, which is not the intent of every video. I'm going to show an example here. This is my own liquid syllabus, and I'm just going to show a clip of the video that students would see at the top of my liquid syllabus. Taking a couple minutes out of. Hi there. I'm Michelle Pacansky-Brock, and I'm going to be your online instructor this term. I look forward to getting to know you, and I want to say thanks for taking a couple minutes out of your time to watch this video. There's a few things I want you to know about me. First of all, I consider myself a teacher at heart. Okay, that's me. This is not me. This is an AI-generated video bot of me speaking the same words. I want you to look closely. Hi there, I'm Michelle Pacansky-Brock, and I'm going to be your online instructor this term.
I look forward to getting to know you, and I want to say thanks for taking a couple of minutes out of your time to watch this video. There's a few things I want you to know about me. First of all, I consider myself a teacher at heart. I love to teach, and I love to teach online. I've done it for a long time, well before COVID, and I've put a lot of work into this class, and I hope that you enjoy it. I really, really mean that.
What stands out to you? Yeah, so more robotic, nonverbals don't match, right? There's that kind of like quirky hand gestures and doesn't go in sync with the words. Lack of warmth vocally, missing your warmth, mismatched facial expression, lack of emotional expression, something different in the eyes. This is your human brain reading these things, okay? Like this is what we're wired for. And the things that you're picking up on that aren't in this video, those are the things that build trust, human to human. So, I mean, I did this to myself because I wanted you to see. And Jim, thank you for bringing up the uncanny valley. Yes, the uncanny valley is actually a coin that was a term that was coined by robotics professor Masahiro Mori way back in the 1970s. And it describes the space or the place at which humans are no longer comfortable with things that seem mechanical and human at the same time. So there's a degree to which we're okay with that. And then it drops off into uncanny valley. And that's generally what I think this is, or at least it is today. But what I want you to know, folks, is that I created a video bot less than a year ago that was like almost laughable. And I showed this one to my kids and they said, Mom, if I didn't know you, it would be believable. And so it's really interesting. It's just a really interesting place. And again, I want you to keep in mind that a video bot can deliver information, and I actually think in the future it will. I think in the future we are going to have instructors who are using video bots for certain things. And I think we should disclose that they're video bots. But if we're building trust, if that's the intent of what we're doing, it's not a place for video bots. And I hope that all instructors will really start thinking about where they are on the spectrum between humanizing, which centers building relationships, and delivering content, because that's critical. So we're at this point where we've got kind of this emergence of a mental health crisis, the proliferation of AI, inequities in social outcomes, educational outcomes. And we know that human connection is an antidote for all these things. Some of the shifts that I see happening currently, we're shifting from AI detection to AI integration in teaching and learning, from policy to transparent and contextual guidance, from having students submit a product to us to proof of their learning process. And all of these shifts are more impactfully aligned with the type of relationship that instructors have with their students. Positional authority or relational authority. Positional authority is based on one's formal role or title. That's where the authority is derived from, right? I am your professor, so you will do what I say. It's based on hierarchy and organizational policy. Relational authority is earned through trust and respect. It's built through interactions, and it's based on personal qualities and expertise. And this is where the warm demander pedagogy comes into play that I mentioned earlier. So the type of authority that we intentionally approach and bring into our relationships with students is really important. And so what I start to think about is how we can design assessments as we're in this moment, and we know that we need to redesign our assessments because they're not working. Can we start thinking about assessments as connection catalysts? What if, and I just propose this, what if in Canvas we have an assignment where there's an instructions and a rubric, and maybe we're encouraging students to use generative AI to do something like brainstorm. And they submit their process as documentation. And what if, as part of that assignment, they go outside of the class and they interact with others, friends, family, community? They talk with people, they go outside. I say go outside because that's also something that mitigates loneliness. Hands-on projects, interviews, conversations, surveys, hands-on projects that they could get family members involved with, maybe. This is a way to really bring interaction and human connection into teaching and learning. And then that comes back into Canvas, right? They share what they made, they share what they created, they submit their products, and that's what the students use to have as a catalyst for their own interactions, right? So we're moving into the real world and away from texts or books, right? And then maybe there's some final reflection assignment at the end to talk about, to really kind of unpack and reflect on what they learned, in which they cite contributions that were made by their peers. And here's just an example from an assignment for one of my classes. I'm just going to show a brief clip. This assignment was intended to get students warmed up to talking about what an archive is. And so I have students go out and find examples from their archives.
This is a picture of when she was 1 year old. And I believe it was taken in 1917 because my mother said that her mother was born in 1916. So in this photo, she was 1 year old. So believe it was taken 1917 to 1918. This photo is very meaningful, especially today, seeing it's Mother's Day, and so asking my mother for this photo, I'm sure was I don't know if it was maybe hard for her or not, seeing how it's Mother's Day and she's not with us anymore.
So I'm going to pause that there just as an example, a simple example. It's not much of an example, but I just wanted to show something to make it a little bit more authentic. And in terms of integrating AI into assignments, if you have not yet seen the AI assessment scale, I encourage you to check it out. It's by Perkins, Furs, Rowe, and McVaugh. It's intended to be used by faculty and students. So faculty determine which of the different levels of the assessment scale applies to the assessment, and they clearly mark the assessment with an image or some kind of notation that informs students about how AI is permitted to be used in that assignment. And so that's just an example of how we can start thinking about leveraging frameworks to move away from rigid policies and more towards integration of AI. And there are also these social connection fact cards that are included in the Surgeon General's report that could be integrated into your course materials as a way of really kind of normalizing mental health and really centering the reasons why human connections are being encouraged. And then when it comes to faculty literacy for AI, start using it to create your assessments if you haven't already. Start using it. Here's a simple prompt that I put into Claude, which is the generative AI tool that I often use. Asking for help brainstorming ideas for learning activities that foster interactions with family, friends, or get students outside and in their community/nature. And these are some of the examples that were surfaced for astronomy. I'm not going to read through those, but I just wanted you to see some of them. And it doesn't mean that you're going to lift one of these up and use them, but it's a great way to get more ideas. Brainstorming is something that generative AI is excellent at because it's not human, because it isn't inhibited by what other people are going to think about its ideas. So here's a prompt that you can plug into an AI tool of your generative AI tools if you of your choice if you would like. I encourage you to always also refine it to ensure that it aligns with your learning outcomes. That's important when it comes to assessments. And I just have some resources linked on the slide here for you. If you want to dig deeper with anything, there's a lot of people out there to learn from. And I'm going to leave with one closing thought here from neuroscientist Antonio Damasio. We are not thinking machines, we are feeling machines that think. So I want you to remember that with regards to everything that you do. You are doing a great job. This is really, really hard work. I know you're tired and we've got to keep going. So I'm going to pause there and you're welcome to share questions or comments, anything that might be resonating with you. I'm happy to have a chat for about 5 minutes. Or if there's anything in the chat that I missed, I'm happy to address that now.
There's lots of positive words of affirmation and thank yous, but I do see a hand up from Jeffrey, so maybe we'll give him the floor.
Hi, Jeffrey.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for that. That was very interesting. I was wondering if I could get a little bit into the methodological weeds of your study, just as a little bit of a background. And there were a couple things that I was not entirely sure of. One of the things I didn't quite understand was the difference between diversity of learners and diversity of students. And it seemed like there was a little bit of maybe conceptual slippage there. It seemed like you were using them sort of at times synonymously and times not. So I was just kind of curious about that. And the other thing I was kind of curious about, you talked about better success rates. And I wanted to know what constitutes success in this context.
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's a lot in that question you just asked me, and so I'm probably going to have to ask you to rephrase some of it because I won't remember it all, but I can start with the success rates.
Okay.
In the California community colleges, we have a tendency to focus on success as finishing a course with an A, B, or C. And so that's the criteria that was used in that study. With regards to the research, did you ask me another research question?
It was more of a question just about the research that you did than the study that you did in that context.
So let me, I can point you to our website. We actually, there's 3 different studies that are wrapped up in the data that I shared with you. So it's really complicated. But under resources, if you go to research findings, and the website is humanizol.org, you can download a research brief that will get into the belonging findings. The other findings we haven't written a research brief yet for, but it's coming soon. And then regards to my use of diversity, yeah, I guess it kind of, I mean, I want to say that diversity applies to across the board anything that a person that groups of people bring to the table. So it intersects with all of those different social identities that I showed on the identity wheel. There may have been a context where I used it differently. I'm not exactly sure.
Oh, could I just follow on that a little bit?
Uh-huh.
Okay, no, I understood that there are identities that are both culturally and physically determined that distinguishes different kinds of students. But you also started talking about the diversity of learners that students can learn in different ways. You know, we have visual learners and auditory learners and text, you know, there's a whole set of pedagogical sort of categories of different types of learners. And it seemed like to me that at times those were kind of used synonymously. So that's what I was getting at. Maybe I hope that's a little clearer.
Yeah, that's generally not what I think of when I say diversity of learners.
Okay.
That whole learning styles thing has kind of, been disproven over the years. So yeah, in my work, I do tend to focus on identity in terms of diversity. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Which includes neurodivergence, of course, which is the way the brain's wired.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
Thanks for your
with
question.
that, we are at time. I just want to give, if y'all can do a little emoji to give a big round of applause for Michelle for a wonderful webinar, especially the student voices and just the diversity of perspectives that she shared. Thank you so much. I hope that you'll join us for our last webinar for our fall series for CVC. It'll be on Monday with Jose Antonio Bowen, so I encourage you to register for that. There's still time. And if you haven't taken the survey, please do so. And with that, I will stop recording and thank you so much for your time, everyone.
Thanks for being here. Take care of yourself.